Good morning. Go ahead and take a seat. Hey, happy Thanksgiving. I'm impressed you're here. Be honest with you. If they didn't pay me to be here with the weather the way that it is right now, I'd probably be in pajamas watching online. So I just want to let you know I see you, and I'm grateful you're here with me today. If you have a Bible, and I hope that you do, meet me over in the book of Matthew. Okay, Matthew chapter 6. I want to give you a little roadmap of where we're going to go over the next couple of weeks and set the stage for you. Today we're going to look at a sermon that Jesus did on this called the Sermon on the Mount, and he is going to address the topic of generosity. Now, before you zone out, because I know some of you are like, here we go. I came the day after Thanksgiving and, generosity talk. Couple things I want you to know. Number one, I wasn't supposed to do this talk. Jim was. So you can thank him. Number two, if that's you, listen, if you're like sitting here thinking, here we go again, I want to give you an out from the very beginning. And I mean this. Go give your money somewhere else. That's our out, because this has nothing to do with money. Okay, what Jesus is about to talk about has nothing to do with money. It has everything to do with our hearts. And he cares way more about us being generous people than we do filling line items on a budget. Here's what I want you to know, though. What Jesus is about to talk about in the Sermon on the Mount has the greatest potential of keeping you from him. And that's why he talks so much about it. If you didn't know this, there are more passages of scripture in the Bible on money than any other topic. Most people don't realize this. There are more topics about money in the Bible than faith, heaven, and hell combined. Matter of fact, there's over 2,000 verses in the Bible on money alone. There's more warnings towards the rich in Scripture than anyone else. And here's why. Because Satan would love nothing more than for you and I, where we live, to be totally content with everything that we have and never ever trust the Lord because we take care of ourselves. Y'all, most people would want you just zone out because, look, a couple churches around the world have abused this so much that here we go, another church is going to talk about it. And I'm just telling you, Satan would want you to feel that way. Now, here's my promise to you. Over the next 40 minutes, I'm not going to guilt trip you into anything at all. I'm just going to talk to you about what Jesus talks about, all right? So we're going to do that today. Next week, we're starting a new sermon series through Advent. So we'll start our Advent calendar on what we call Conversations with Jesus. What I'm going to do over the next several weeks is talk to you about or show you these stories about Jesus having conversations with different people in the gospel and what that looks like. On Christmas Eve, I'm going to talk about the story of Nicodemus and how Jesus tells him he must be born again. And I want to show you how the birth of Christ really does set the trajectory in changing your entire eternity. Now, I want you to know, I do that on purpose because a lot of you are like, man, my friends only come to church once or twice a year. And I'm like, exactly. And they get the same exact sermon every year that they come. So I try to switch it up a little bit because I want to show them how the gospel impacts everything. We're going to come back after Christmas, and we'll be in the book of Hebrews chapter 11, and we're basically going to do an Old Testament survey through the characters of the book of Hebrews. It's going to be amazing, all right? So that's where we're going over the next several weeks. Today, though, meet me over in Matthew chapter 6. J.R.R. Tolkien, the famous Oxford professor, who's probably most famous for writing the trilogy, Lord of the Rings. And if you are like, spoiler alert, and you haven't read or heard of the Lord of the Rings, I can't help you. In that, he has this character named Gollum. All of us have heard about it, right? My precious, where he talks about this ring that he has. That character, he's so captivated by this ring because this ring brings him power and authority, and it changes his life. And Tolkien, being as smart as he is trying to show you that it has nothing to do with the ring. This is an analogy for anything in life that tends to captivate us. Because the disturbing thing about Gollum in all of this is that he thinks that this power that he's going to consume actually begins to consume him. What he wants you to see is exactly what Jesus is going to show you today. All the treasures of this world that we think will give us joy and happiness, we won't consume them. They will end up consuming us if we are not careful. Because there's a lot of things in this world that is competing for your heart. These treasures. And again, Jesus uses that word on purpose, and I'm going to show you this in a second because he's not just talking about money. It's anything that you and I want so much that we're willing to give anything to get it. Maybe for you, it's romance. I know a lot of people that if they could just have that perfect relationship that they think about all the time, that's their treasure. For others of you, and maybe this is the one that captivates most of us, it's that white picket fence on Freemanville Road and that severely inbred Labradoodle that doesn't shed and he's hypoallergenic so that you can have the perfect home. Or if it's my house, it's little Frenchie that is not inbred because he can't even breathe. And all my kids talk about is having these things, and they end up sucking the life out of you if you're not careful. The book of Matthew. We call this a Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5 through 7. Here's why I love this so much. Matthew 5 through 7 is the most concise topic that Jesus gives you that assumes gospel living. Here's what Jesus is saying. If you're a Christian, here's what your life should look like. And he goes through a series of topics to show you that he didn't come to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law. And the problem with the law is that the Pharisees have lowered the bar so much that they're merely external. And he wants to show you that your heart matters deeply. And then he gets to this topic that we're about to look at in generosity. And he goes on to say that your heart matters so much that if you are a Christian, the gospel implications on your life have to impact even your generosity. Jesus is about to show you that your treasures have a way of being Gollum's ring like nothing else does. That they become your master that will suck you in and take everything out of you, especially your relationship with Christ, which is why he talks so powerfully about the topic we're about to get into. So check it out, Matthew chapter 6, starting in verse 19. Listen to what Jesus says. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. Y'all, that is an imperative statement, meaning that it's a command. It's not a suggestion. Jesus is not sitting here saying, hey, I think it's a bad idea to invest your life in the things of this world. Matter of fact, if you actually look at the most direct translation, Jesus actually is saying, don't treasure your treasures. Which, the point here is that we tend to stack up our wealth. We tend to like things so much that we put our treasure into our treasures. Or the way a lot of scholars say it, they say Jesus is actually saying, stop laying up treasures for yourself, as if he's assuming that is what we naturally do. He's not saying it's a bad idea. He's saying, guys, you're going to do it. By the way, let me just confess to you, this is absolutely my default. Okay? I don't want to sit up here and preach to you a message without showing you that this is honestly where I live. It is so easy to want to take care of myself and my family. And honestly, it feels noble. It feels like I'm providing for my kids and giving them the things that they want. And it's incredibly difficult to look at taking some of my stuff, my resources, and giving it away to somebody else. So if that's you, I resonate with that. My family, we tithe here at City Church. For the last 18 or so years of ministry, we have tithed every single bit of my income. And tithe, by the way, I know that there's a lot of definitions. Here's what I mean. The first 10% of my income goes to City Church. And we do that for multiple reasons. Number one, I do that because I don't ever want to ask you to do something that we're not doing. But here's number two. I do it because Jesus commanded it, and I do it on an auto draft here, so I don't put it in the bucket or in the back, and I don't do that because I'm righteous. I do that because if I didn't do it on auto draft, I probably wouldn't do it. Just be real with you. Like every single week that would come up and I had to write a check, it would be really hard for me to, it's not like generosity overflows out of my heart. I have this Gollum ring. I'm a car guy. Anybody else? When I'm driving down Highway 9 and I see those beautiful Rivian SUVs, I look at them and I think, my precious. I do. You can laugh, but it's just true. And I sit there sometimes and I'm counting up my head because my second largest bill, if you want to call it that, is our tithe. Outside of our mortgage. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, I could afford that. I could afford that if I just didn't give to the church. And church is going to be all right. By the way, Jesus wants me to be happy. And man, I'd be really happy in that Rivian SUV. Or as my son says, Cybertruck. And you can think it looks like a dump truck. It does. But it's one beautiful looking dump truck. And I love it. I love it. And y'all, for you, your heart might not be towards cars, but there is something in your life that tends to pull you away from the greatest joy that you could have, which is generosity. I heard a story about a man. He went to his financial advisor, and he's kind of confessing as they're planning out his future. He says, when I had $50,000, like it was so easy to be generous. And now that I have $500,000, it's like it's hard. And the financial advisor like, man, it's not really that difficult. Why don't you just give away 450,000 of it and you'll be right back at 50. And he's like, are you kidding? Listen to what he said, because I think this is so good. He said, it's not that easy. Having money is like holding on to an electrical wire. The more juice, the tighter the grip. And isn't that the truth? And y'all, we got a lot of juice around here. And that treasure is gripping onto us. And what you and I have to understand is that it doesn't just grip you, it does this right here, which keeps you from Jesus. That's why he cares so much, because our treasures create our independence. And by the way, treasure isn't just money. It's anything that you want in your heart so badly that you're willing to leverage to get it. Tim Keller, pastor of Redeemer Presbyterian Church, my favorite theologian, says a treasure is that thing that you find most beautiful at the core of your being. Most of the single people I know, they idolize marriage so much that they cannot envision a life without being married. They cannot envision singleness as a gift from God. That has become their treasure. It's the thing that they're willing to do just about anything for, and they end up being so upset by the fact that they aren't in a relationship. And y'all, by the way, I love my marriage, and let me just tell you, it's temporary. As much as I love it, it's temporary. Again, for others of you, it's the dream house or the vacations or the beach house that you want. Or for many of you, it's the title that you have at work. It's no wonder that every Fortune 500 company has 17 CEOs. They're just giving out titles like candy because they know something that you don't know yet, which is this. That thing's Gollum's ring. And it makes you feel really good and proud about who you are, and that thing grips you. Or some of you right now, it's your security in the stock market. And you check that thing so obsessively. And you can tell it's your precious because your attitude changes with the ups and downs of the swing of the stock market. You cannot envision a future of which God actually takes care of you because you have to leverage yourself to take care of yourself. Y'all, here's what Jesus is saying. Those things are not bad, but they are seductive. And the seductive nature of those things have a power that can destroy you if you don't learn how to go from this to this. And oftentimes, our money it's the idol that keeps us independent and trusting. Which is why, by the way, look at verse 22. This is the point that Jesus is making. The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? Now, this seems like a hard left turn. You're like, Jesus, we're just talking about money. Now we're talking about eyes and darkness and light and all. Like, what are you talking about? Look, it took me actually a long time to figure out what Jesus was saying. But here's what he's saying. He's saying the eye is the window into your life. In other words, what you look at determines your whole being. And Jesus is saying that your lamp is the body of your eye, and if the condition of the room is dimmed, you need to ask yourself, what's obscuring the light from coming in? Now, again, let me listen. In Luke chapter 12, he gives a parallel example of this that actually helps. He says the exact same thing, and then he says this, watch out for greed. Here's what Jesus is saying. Greed tends to be the thing that obscures clarity in your life from the Lord. And greed is that one sin that none of you think you have. Or us. Let me use that. None of us think we're greedy. You know, it's not like any other sin I have to explain to you it's a sin, right? Like I don't have to explain to you that having an affair is a sin. And most of you, by the way, if I have to have a counseling session with you and we have to sit down and talk about the fact that the affair is wrong, we got bigger issues, right? Most of us inherently know that there are certain things like stealing and lying and those are just sins and we know it. I don't have to convince you of it. But the problem with greed is, I don't know anybody who thinks they're greedy. I don't know anybody that wakes up in the morning and says, yeah, I'm a really greedy person. It tends to be when you're far down the road that you can look back on it and realize that those things have captivated you. What Jesus is saying is that this is the sin that lurks in the shadows that most of us don't think that we actually have. Right? It's the hardest part about greed is that we're blind to it. And listen, blind spots are blind spots because you can't see them. Greed is subtle. Greed is really, really difficult. Here's what Tim Keller said. Tim Keller said, greed is sin's eye. It hides itself behind you, and that's why Jesus says you gotta watch out for it. Now here's what I want you to understand about blind spots. The only way you're ever gonna see your blind spot is if you have somebody in your life that can point those things out to you. Relationship, a community, accountability. But the crazy thing is, I know most mature Christians have accountability partners for everything but their finances. I know very few people that have somebody in their life that knows exactly what they make and exactly what they give. And I don't know why we don't. Like, we have accountability partners for what we look at on the internet or the emails that we send or our calendars and what we do. And yet, Jesus talks about this subject more than just about anything. And most of us have believed the lie that this is so private that nobody can know. Again, our elders know exactly how much I make, and they know exactly how much I give. And I'm grateful for that. And I think that all of us should be able to ask ourselves, why do we not feel like we can be accountable in these things? Because here's what I know is Satan wants to convince you that that's your stuff and nobody should know about it. It should be confidential. But the reality is when you do that, things lurk in the shadows and then nobody knows and you miss out on the greatest part of what Jesus is trying to do. You know, when Acts chapter 2 came and God had just poured out his Spirit on the church, we get a picture of what a healthy church looked like that was walking with the Lord. Listen to what Acts chapter 2 says, Acts chapter 2:42. And they, the church, devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. You know, that's preaching. They came to church and they fellowshiped together in the breaking of bread and prayers. And awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. You know, we heard a story at 9:15 from our French missionaries about how they were praying for this guy who owns this yacht thing, and he got miraculously healed. And then not only did he come to faith because of that, but people around him came to faith, their boss came to faith, and it started a trickle effect. And some of you are like, yeah, that happens way out there. Never really happens here. By the way, just a couple weeks ago, Ken Wolf had a bunch of what they thought were tumors in his body. A bunch of us came around him, prayed for him. He goes back in for his biopsy and they tell him, hey man, we thought this was cancer, but it's not. There's nothing to worry about. So don't tell me that God doesn't do miracles. Okay, yeah, you can clap for that. Wonders and signs were done through the apostles. And all who believed, listen, were together and had all things in common. That's unity, not uniformity, by the way. We're not after uniformity. We don't want sameness. We want oneness. And they were selling their possessions. Y'all, imagine if you went to a church like this. They came together, they're unifying, they're selling all their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God, having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their numbers day by day those who were being saved. Listen, this is not the sermon, but if you want to have the greatest evangelistic tactic in the world, live like this. You don't have to have a bullhorn on a corner. Just live like this. Sell all your stuff. Help one another out. Do community together. Watch what the world does. They're going to say, man, you have something I don't have and I need it. You know, they had all things in common. Listen, the church was never meant to be an event that you attended. It was supposed to be a family that you belong to. And then when God pours out his Spirit on a church, what naturally happens is that you're unified, you hunger for God's word, and you take care of the needs of the people around you. And I'm going to tell you, like, the only way you're ever going to do that is if your treasures are in heaven and not on earth. That's the only way. Let me tell you a couple of stories from this year that most of you don't get privy to, but they're incredible. Earlier on this year, there's a family at our church who the husband lost his job, okay? And that happens a lot. But I think he interviewed, and I don't think it's hyperbolic. You can check me on this, but I think he interviewed like 100 times and kept getting turned down. And kept getting turned down, and kept getting turned down. And they ran out of money. And his community group that he is in came to me and Jim and said, listen, we're going to start paying their bills for them. And we said, whatever you guys give, we'll match. And for the next several months, City Church paid their bills. And they didn't lose their house. They didn't lose their cars. They're still here, and they faithfully served, and they attended the entire time, and by the grace of God, now he has a job, and they're doing well. Isaac and Jaja, they were here in the first gathering with their 2 kids that they took in through FaithBridge foster care. Y'all, I can't tell you how proud I was the moment that they got those 2 kids, and I drive to their apartment, and you guys are furnishing their apartment. They didn't have kids, so, swings and car seats and food and diapers and all this stuff. And those kids, they went from not speaking to now they're exuberant and happy, and God is doing a great work in their life, and it's awesome. There was another family at our church. Another family at our church lost their home. And I learned about this retrospectively. They're living with somebody at our church. And as they're in the process of trying to find a job, which they got, another couple of people at our church bought them a car. And now they're able to get in their car and go to work. When we hired Mason, young guy, first job, a family at our church said, hey, we've got extra room in our house. Why don't you just have him move in with us? Y'all, I could go on and on and on. That food pantry thing outside that we started collecting donations for, I got frustrated last week because I thought we were supposed to deliver that food to the food bank. And Jim's like, we did. And it filled up again and again. It multiplied that kid's Hebrew Happy Meal that Jesus fed 5,000 people with. Every time I turned around, the thing's filled up again. Because that's what a church does that has glad and generous hearts. And I'm proud to say that that's the type of church that we are. Skip Heitzig, a pastor that I love, listen to what he says. He says, you can give without loving, but you can never love without giving. Y'all, you love so well. And I want to challenge you to be generous. You meet needs, but it's more than that. Here's what Jesus is saying. Make sure you have a healthy eye. And that's only possible through community. Having people in your life as you live with one another that can tell you to let go of your earthly treasures because those things will control you if you don't. Let me read it to you again. The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light of you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Here's what he's saying. What you put into your head will corrupt your entire being if you are not careful, and you will become a slave to it. I'm telling you, you think you control your money, but your money controls your heart. That's what Jesus is saying. So here's the anecdote. I want to read it to you one more time. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. That word healthy there, oftentimes it's translated as good if your eye is good. Actually, the King James Version, I think, gets it best. The word there probably should be single or singular. If your eye has a singular vision, your whole body will be full of light. Here's what Jesus is saying. The only antidote to greed is to have a singularly focused vision of him. That's it. If you don't want to be greedy, it's like the old Puritan Thomas Chalmers said, the explosive power of a new affection. You have to love something more than you love that. And the only thing you can love more than your stuff is Jesus. And if you don't, you will be controlled by that thing that you worship. Y'all, this is so practical, okay? Like, you show me your 5 closest friends, I will show you your future. I promise. Did you know statistics say that if your 5 closest friends lose weight, so will you? Because you are so much more like the people around you than you actually think you are. You show me your credit card statement, I'll show you what you value. You show me your calendar, man, I'll show you what's important to you. Jesus is saying that you have something that is fighting for the throne of your heart, and that is your treasure. And if you want to be healthy, you have to have a singularly focused worship of him. Which, let me just, again, practical, man. This is not hard stuff. That means you need to have a regular rhythm of Bible reading and prayer. Because if you never spend time with him, you're not going to love him. And if you don't love him, you're not going to invest in him. Like, some of you need to start Sabbathing. And I know you're like, I can't. I don't have any margin in my life. That's the point. The point is, if you never slow down and rest, you're never going to realize that he's the one that does the work for you. Right? I don't want to burst your bubble, but you're not as important as you think you are. Just take a rest. I promise you, God's going to take care of you. Like, you have to build these rhythms into your life. You got to start prioritizing worship. worship over travel and travel sports. And I'm the pot calling the kettle black. I'm not telling you anything that I don't wrestle with and struggle with. But I'm just going to tell you the idol of our culture might not be money. It might be our time. And I got 4 kids in travel sports and we do all this stuff. And my question is am I willing to lay out my calendar before the Lord and say it's yours? Because I'm discipling my kids. And one day if I'm not careful, my kids are going to grow up. And you know what? They're going to say, you know what my daddy really cared about was my sports and not Jesus. He might have said he cared about it, but everything we did said the other. And I don't want that to be true of any of us. Here's why we have such a hard time with this. It's not because we don't believe what Jesus is saying is true, because we do. But it's because we believe the lie that it's not as powerful as it is. But it's so powerful that listen to what Jesus says. No one can serve 2 masters. For either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Y'all, this is serious business. Serious business. That word serve there, it's a religious word. It means worship. Here's Jesus like, you're either going to worship me or you're going to worship your stuff. And you can't worship both. And if you're not careful, you're going to realize that this thing is a seductive liar. You know why money's so powerful? Because money will lie to you. Here's what money's going to say. Money's going to say, hey, if you just worship me, I'll take care of you. Doesn't it? Maybe if you just give me a little more, I'll give you joy. You invest here, I'm going to take care of your future. Doesn't it convince you, hey, you want security? It ain't in Jesus, it's in your bank account. Money's a great liar. And it's a tempting liar. It's why so many of us, men especially, will pursue jobs that we hate. How many men do I know that get up every single day and work a job that they absolutely hate because you get a big paycheck? And you come home and you're enslaved to a lender, to a house that's way too big, and cars that are way too nice, and you're sitting here and you're miserable, but you got to continue to do it because you've convinced yourself that this is right. Jim tells this story to me about being in Denmark and watching a guy get a Lifetime Achievement Award after he sacrificed his entire life and his entire family to go serve at some company that all they gave him was a sheet of paper at the end. And Jim was like, man, it was a wake-up call because this seems pretty miserable. Like I'm traveling 300 days a year. I'm giving my entire life to this thing that's not even fulfilling. And at the end of the day, they just move on. I found this out the hard way with football. When I had a career-ending injury in football, man, I thought football was my treasure. And the very next day, guess what happened? Next guy up. Newspapers are writing about the next guy. People have forgotten. I hadn't been graduated that long. I'm only 26. They don't even remember who I am. I'm a little older than that. But I kid you not. They don't even know who I am. I could walk back to this university that I worshiped, and they don't even know my name. And if I told them my name, they'd be like, who are you? I brought my son to Georgia Southern one time, and the lady at the check-in, going to the football facilities, I'm walking in there, and I'm like, yeah, I used to play football here. I gave her my name. She's like, I need to go check with somebody. I'm like, bro, you don't even know. That's our stuff. That's our stuff. See, Jesus doesn't say anything nearly as strongly about anything else in Scripture because nothing is as seductive as our stuff to fight for worship. Y'all, Satan's greatest tactic is to convince you that you are your own independence. It's the American dream. Take care of ourselves. Take care of ourselves. Honestly, our stuff tends to put us in social classes that convince us that we're better than the people around us. Like most people don't want to have this conversation, but I just want to be real with you for a second. Most of our success is so much more complicated than we worked hard. Okay, you know why I played Division I football? Because I was 6'3", 230 pounds. I didn't do anything to be 6'3", 230 pounds. I came out, my mom was womb big. Okay? For many of you, it's your geography, your family. It's all these factors that you had nothing to do with that helped you contribute to it. You could have been born with a cognitive disability that didn't allow you to work that hard. You could be like my friend Nozium. Nozium lives in Kenya, down in the Masai Mara. Her daddy is blind, and her sister is blind. And in that community, there are no government subsidies. To be blind is a death sentence. Okay? No work, you're going to starve to death. If it weren't for the generosity of City Church, Nozium, this is not hyperbolic, would have been married off at 8 years old. And she would have been married off to a man that's probably 50 or 60 years old. She would have had about 4 kids. He would have died when she was like 16 or 17. And then she would have been homeless and impoverished, taking care of a bunch of kids that she was enslaved to by this man. And the only thing that is different between me and her is geography, where we were born. And for many of us, if we don't get this, you are going to have an ownership mentality and not a stewardship mentality. An ownership mentality says, I earned it, I did it, it's mine. A stewardship mentality says, God, you've been gracious and you've been kind and it's yours and I want to steward it to everybody that I can. Y'all, if you have this mentality, you will never look down on others. I say it to you all the time. It's impossible to look down on others when you're always looking up in worship. The difference is gratefulness. Gratefulness. Does your heart see yourself as awesome, impressive, somebody that earned everything they have? Or do you see yourself as somebody who's stewarding the gracious gifts of God? Listen to me. Gratitude is the attitude that is necessary to release your heart from the slavery of your stuff. That's it. The key to not serving money is a grateful heart. And the only way you're going to have a grateful heart is to know who Jesus is. So let me just get really, really practical. The easiest way living in Milton, Georgia, to release yourself from your stuff is to give it away. Just give it away. Again, it's going from this to this. Like, did you know there are more promises in the scriptures tied to generosity than anything else? Listen to this. The word love shows up in scripture 714 times. The word believe shows up in scripture 272 times. The word pray 371 times. The word give shows up in scripture 2,152 times. Y'all, this is talked about everywhere because generosity is the key to releasing us from our own independence. Yo, and we have a generous God. He spoke and galaxies came into existence. He gave generously everything that we have. Matter of fact, he says he loves a cheerful giver. That it's more blessed to give than it is to receive. And you know this when you feel the joy of giving. And by the way, this isn't prosperity talk. Go read 2 Corinthians chapters 8 and 9. Paul is very clear on that. This is why, if you don't want to be a slave to your stuff, be generous with your stuff. Jesus would say in verse 19, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroy and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. You see what Jesus is saying? You can send your treasures ahead of you and enjoy them for all of eternity. Think about that. You can enjoy your stuff now and you won't have it later. Or you can invest it into the eternal and enjoy it forever. Most of you have heard of the psychological experiment done in the 1970s by Stanford University where they sat these kids down at a table and they gave them marshmallows. And they told the kids, hey, you can have 1 marshmallow now, or if you wait 15 minutes, we'll give you 2. And they left the room, they left the marshmallow right in front of them, and then they put a camera up to watch them, and you know how this works. Every kid's like, well, the kids that took the marshmallow, statistically speaking, ended up being far less productive in life. Okay, they were impulsive. They were they did worse in their academic performance. They were less emotionally stable. They had worse relationships, and here's why. The lie of instant gratification. The lie of instant gratification is if I just take it now, I'll be happy. But the reality is if we leverage for something even greater, we'll actually be happier. Notice Jesus gives you a negative and a positive. Negative, do not lay up for yourself treasures on earth. Positive, lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. He's saying, y'all, what you invest in matters. You can take it now, or you can multiply it in eternity. Now here's the warning. And this is what I think at the heart of what Jesus is saying. If you have most of your treasures on earth, your heart will be on earth. That's the warning. That's exactly what, look, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. If you live for this world, you are going to care about this world. That's what you're going to think about. It's where your time's going to go. It's where your treasures are going to go. Or as C.S. Lewis said it, prosperity knits a man to this world. He feels that he is finding his place in it while it is finding its place in him. So, if you want to love the things of God, it's pretty simple. Invest in the things of God because your heart will follow your treasures. This is exactly what Jesus is saying. If you find your treasures in heaven, you're going to love heavenly things. If you find your treasures on earth, you're going to love earthly things. I'm telling you, this is why I want every one of you guys to go on a mission trip. By the way, we're scheduling 3 of them for next year. We're going to go to Kuala Lumpur, we're going to go to India, and we're going to go to the Dominican Republic. And I know those are not sexy places. But here's what I want you to know. Those are the most lost places on earth. And I want you to go there because listen, short-term missions knit your heart to God's mission. And it changes who you are. And you'll go there and you'll serve for 2 weeks and God will change you. And then whenever you see that the gospel's spreading in those places, you will feel the winds of those things. You'll pray for them and you'll feel joy in your partnership with them. It's just true. It's true of everything. The things that you invest in are the things that will have your heart. If you're generous with your stuff, I'm telling you, you're going to love the things of God. And listen, I just need you to know, it's not like God needs anything from us. When taxes were due, Jesus went and found money in a fish's mouth, right? Like whenever people were hungry, he multiplied a kid's Lunchable and fed 20,000 people. Like, do you really think that the God who spoke in galaxies came into existence is like, man, if Dan would just give a little more, like we could change the world. No, that's not how this thing works. It's not about money. God's trying to take idols out of our heart, not our idols out of idols out of our heart, not money out of our pocket. And here's the reality, the harsh reality. In America, confessing followers of Jesus are not very generous. According to stats, we give about 2.7% of our income away to charity. 2.3%. And non-Christians give about 1.7%. Non-Christians are just as philanthropic as we are. At City Church, about 85% of our budget is funded by about 15% of the people who attend here. And that's just the reality, but I just want you to know, imagine what we could do to change the world if we were truly generous. And again, this is not a guilt talk, because if you hear me talking about money, go give it somewhere else. The thing is God has always provided everything that we need. I just want to challenge you to let go and be like this. So here's my question for you. Are you living for the temporary or are you leveraging for the eternal? That's the question. One has a temporary ROI. And look, it does. It has an ROI. But it will enslave you and take you away from the Lord. The other one has an eternal investment that has dividends that pay off forever. Y'all, in the most straightforward sense, here's what Jesus is saying. All of your earthly treasures, as awesome as they are, will decay. All of them. I don't care if it's your money. I don't care if it's your car. Y'all, my car that I got 7 years ago that was brand new, that shiny little thing, it ain't brand new anymore. When I moved into my house 8 years ago, it was the largest house I've ever lived in. And now I look at it, and as my kids get older, I think, man, this is kind of small. I need more. My marriage, and I love my marriage. This will be my 15-year anniversary this year. Guess what? It ain't going to last forever. Till death do us part. Everything is temporary. Y'all, you and I both know that those things are amazing, but it's foolish if we live for them because at some point they're going to come to an end. Like I've told you before, I've never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse because you can't take stuff with you. And here's the harsh reality, and this one's like a gut check. All of your treasures, your great-grandchildren are probably going to drop off at a thrift store one day. Y'all, I got a box full of VHS tapes in my garage, taking up space. And I don't even know why we have them. My kids are like, Daddy, what are those things? I don't know. But that's all of our stuff. All of our stuff's going to be that. And the question is why? Why do we do it? I heard this. There's no smaller package than a man wrapped up in himself. Oh. just foolish. You know what you can bring to heaven with you? People. People. So I don't know about you, but I want my life to be one that is leveraged to do everything I can to see the maximum amount of people in heaven. There's no greater ROI than that. Spending eternity with Jesus. That's why at City Church we give away 10% of our annual budget to missions. Because when you give here, that's thousands of dollars going to Kenya. And in Kenya, guess what? They're doing clean water filtration that is building sustainability, that's sending kids to school, building schools, planting churches, and seeing thousands of people's lives transformed by the gospel, right? You've been, Elise. And it's amazing. Y'all, we give to a church in Kuala Lumpur, which is one of the hardest places on the earth to reach people with the gospel. And they're going to 2 services in a couple weeks because they're so full in the heart of Kuala Lumpur with people hungry for the gospel. We give to France, who saw over 200 people get baptized this year through their church. Y'all, through your generosity, we give this thing called the Summit Collaborative because we're a collaborative church where 2% of our annual budget goes to these church plants that were started in the last 15 years. Last I heard, of the 500 churches that were started in the last 15 years, there's over 50,000 people worshiping somewhere, and over 1,000 people were baptized and came to faith this year in a Summit Collaborative church plant. I don't know about you, but I can't think of a greater ROI than that. We give to India, hardest place in the world to see the gospel come, and we're giving there. To the Dominican Republic, who's planting, our friends planting another church in Punta Cana. How about this? We have been a part of planting a church in Las Vegas, Nevada, in Greenville, South Carolina, a couple of them in downtown Atlanta, and we've even been a part of planting our own church in Lawrenceville. Yo, your generosity is fueling the mission of God and expanding the church all over the globe. And we're just a 7-year-old church plant of about 200 people. And listen, 85% of our budget is funded by 15% of our people. Imagine how much more we could do if all of us did something. Imagine the collective impact that we could make on the world if we just gave. So my question for you is, why not us? Here's my prayer. For 2026, 100% of you that call City Church your home will give something. Something. Now, I'm going to challenge you to tithe like my family does, and I know this is incredibly difficult, but it ain't about your money. It's about your heart. And I'm telling you, Jesus wants your time, your talent, and your treasure. I heard this story, true story, about a guy named Danny Simpson, lived in Ottawa, Canada. Danny decided one day that he didn't have enough, so he was going to walk into a bank and rob the bank. Okay. Danny walked into that bank with a Colt 45, stood the bank up, walked out of there with $6,000. He was obviously arrested. He spent the next decade in prison. But the craziest part of the story is when they recovered the gun, listen to this, that gun was his father's 1918 .45 caliber Colt semi-automatic made by the Ross Rifle Company, and it was worth well over $100,000. This fool walked into a bank to get $6,000 with a gun that was worth over $100,000. I don't know about you, but here's what I would call him: stupid. Y'all, the greater treasure he had, he leveraged for a lesser treasure, and I can't think of anything that resembles people who live for earthly treasures more than Danny. Not realizing the treasure that we possess in Christ. We tend to leverage it, and one day we're going to be like, how foolish. How foolish that we possessed something of eternal significance, and we live for the temporary instead. Because we didn't trust that the Lord would take care of us. Now I'm telling you, one of my favorite passages of Scripture is John 10:10. The thief, that's Satan, only comes to steal, kill, and destroy. That's his playbook. If you didn't know, that's what he wants to convince you of. But Jesus says, I came to give you life and give it to you abundantly. Y'all, Satan's game plan is to kill you. And the way that he does it is to convince you that you're just fine on your own. And Jesus is like, I want you. I want you, all of you. So here's the remedy. Give it away. I know that sounds crazy, but if you want to be released from your stuff, give it away. And don't just give it away first. Solomon, the wisest man in the world, wrote Proverbs chapter 3. Listen to what he says: honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will be bursting with wine. You're first. Because God doesn't need your stuff, he wants your heart. And the only way that he's ever going to have your heart is if you have to trust him with the rest. This proverb is the same proverb that most of you know, where he says, trust the Lord with all of your heart. And do not lean on your own understanding. In all of your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Here's what I know. The thing that tends to keep us from really trusting God is our time, our talent, and our treasure. And I just need you to know, Jesus does not want your time. He wants the first of your time. He wants you to put your calendar in front of him like a blank check and say, God, you fill it up first, and then I'll do whatever next. He doesn't just want your talent. He wants the first of your talent. God, I'm not giving the best that I have to Johnson & Johnson. I'm giving the best that I have to you. And then I'll go work for Johnson & Johnson like the greatest person ever because you've gifted me in this way. He doesn't want the first of your money. Or he doesn't want your money. He wants the first of your money. He wants you to say, before I give to anything else, even my mortgage, God, it's yours. And I'm going to trust you to provide for the rest. Because the greatest gift in the world is him. And he wants you so much that he's willing to say you can't serve two masters. Don't fool yourself into thinking that this thing doesn't get a grip on you like Gollum's ring. The reason why most churches don't talk about it is because people get angry. And the reality is we get angry because that tends to be poking on the greatest idol of our heart. So let me just challenge you one more time. Take a step of trust today and invest in the things of God. I want to challenge you to do it here. But if it's an obstacle for you here, go give it somewhere else. Because I promise you, God doesn't want your money. He wants your heart. He wants the first of you so you can trust him with the rest. Let me pray for you. Father in heaven, thank you for messages like this. Lord, they're not always our favorite to give, nor are they our favorite to receive. But God, we do trust you. We know you're good and you're kind. And we know that you have a cattle on 1,000 hills. You have galaxies and you have us. And what you want more than anything is us, relationally, to love you, serve you, and put our hope in you. So Lord, I pray that you would help us to receive that and to trust you.